When you're using Immersive Reader, whether in OneNote or in Word online, you get to it by clicking on the View tab in your ribbon and then clicking on the Immersive Reader button. Right now we're only going to look at the first of the three tabs here. As you hover over them, you can see there's text preferences, grammar options, and reading preferences. We're just going to look at text preferences right now. This has to do with all of the visual elements and kind of relates to the fact that not everybody who has a reading difficulty has a decoding issue, that there are a lot of visual components to reading as well. So you can incrementally change the text size, or there's a toggle switch on and off to change the spacing. For a lot of students, the spacing makes a bigger difference than the text size. So when you think of reduce visual clutter, which is on many IEPs, just by going into Immersive Reader, you reduce visual clutter by removing all of the toolbars, but increasing spacing does that as well. Calibri, Sitka, and Comic Sans are considered fairly simple fonts, but both Calibri and Sitka make A's like this and make G's like this. So Comic Sans is the one on the list that actually makes A's the way students do and G's the way they do. In addition, you also have different themes. So there's the standard black text on white background, but you can also switch to night or dark mode, which you're probably familiar with on your cell phone or Kindle, and so it has a white text on a black background. These next few colors are what are known as Erlen colors. You can go to erlen.org if you're not familiar with them, and most people aren't, but you may have seen a student with a colored transparency on our page, and this is the digital version of that. So Erlen colors have decades of research about the way they help students with different disabilities focus and comprehend more of the text. And then there's a whole series of additional colors that are just sort of pretty pastels that are for student preference. Okay, so that's the Text Preferences tab. Accessing Immersive Reader from Word Online and from OneNote Online is done by clicking on View in the ribbon and then the Immersive Reader button. So we're specifically going to look at the Grammar Options tab. There's Text Preferences, Grammar Options, and Reading Preferences. So Grammar Options is the middle one. First option is to turn on syllables. Now, it may not break syllables into the way that you like. If you're a reading teacher or elementary language arts teacher, I would typically have broken this up. Blend is a one-syllable word, ed is a suffix, same thing with learn, and then ing. So this is not broken up the way a reading teacher would break it up, but it's actually broken up the way we say the words. So if you say blended out loud, blended is where we naturally break it up, and the same is true for learning. So that was the route that Microsoft chose to follow for syllables. Parts of speech can all be turned on for color coding. Anything that you turn on color coding for, you can also show labels for those who are colorblind. Like for me, I can't tell much difference here, but I can certainly tell an N from a V. Without having those colors turned on, there are no labels, so the labels are dependent on color. If you want to change the colors, you can go in here and select a different one. It's the same 12 colors available for each of the 4 parts of speech. Okay, Shout It Out is a beta that a handful of districts across the world are testing out, and we get to be one of them. So with Sound It Out, they have chosen one icon to match each vowel sound. So they have about 18 different vowel sounds, and we are giving them feedback about that. For instance, the short O and the AU sound, we recognize ah and aw as being different sounds. The people who created this do not recognize them as different sounds from the part of the country that they're in, so they have one icon for that, so we've asked them to split that into 2. So that's just one of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten. So this works as long as you keep this in English. All of these parts work as long as you keep them in English. When you switch to another language, which is under the next tab, then some of these features do not function. And that is the Grammar Options tab. Okay, we're looking at Immersive Reader, which you access in Word Online or OneNote Online by clicking on View and Immersive Reader. And right now we're looking at the third tab, which is the Reading Preferences tab. First thing in here is line focus. Sometimes not all of these are available, and I'll be honest, haven't totally figured out why some are or some aren't. Right now we have all 5 available. So when I turn on line focus, it jumps to one line at a time. And when I click to read, it will read one word at a time. It continues to highlight the one word being read, but it only shows one line at a time. And as it proceeds through the text, it continues to read, actually to bring the text up to that line, so students don't have to track down the page, but they can continue to just keep their eyes right here. If you need to wean students off of this, you can work their way to 3 lines or 5 lines. And incidentally, this also works great as a teleprompter. The third tab in Immersive Reader is called Reading Preferences, and in addition to line focus, there's also a picture dictionary. This uses BoardMaker as its source, so if there is a word in BoardMaker that has an image, the image is here. If that word does not have an image in BoardMaker, then it also does not have an image in the picture dictionary here. You can also click on any word and listen to that single word read aloud. So that is the picture dictionary. Okay, within Immersive Reader, we have a text preferences tab, grammar options tab, and a reading preferences tab. And the last item under reading preferences is a translate. So it does have over 50 different languages here, including 3 different versions of Spanish. So in addition to Spanish as spoken in Spain, there's also Mexican and Latin American variants. So you can choose to turn that on by word, in which case it works just like the picture dictionary. If I click on a word, it will, in addition to having the word in English and picture if available, it will also have it in Spanish, and you can click to hear that word read aloud. And if you choose the whole document, give it a moment to translate over, and then you can bounce back and forth freely. Feedback I've gotten from this from World and Classical Language teachers and ELA teachers is that it does Spanish really well, not as well with some other languages, but you can then have it read it aloud in that other language, and depending on the language chosen, some of the other options will be available. For Spanish, syllables and parts of speech are available, but labels, as well as labels. For some other languages, these will not be available. And again, some of the other languages don't translate sentences as accurately as Spanish does. So that is the third tab in Immersive Reader.